Some people have a dedicated workshop. I have whatever this is. It's many things, in fact. An elaborate obstacle course, seasonal decor warehouse, recycling transfer station, botanical crime scene, and even a band-aid graveyard. This two-car garage is also my woodshop, where I've been storing table saw blades in a cardboard box. In this shared ecosystem, every inch has to earn its keep. So in this video, I'm building a simple cabinet to store my table saw blades. The larger right side will hold the blades vertically in the slots, and I'll have a few shelves on the left and top for storing things like miter stops, feather boards, and inserts. So let's get started. The cabinet is made from plywood scraps I grabbed from a local cabinet maker, so it's mostly pre-cut. I'll start by trimming the case parts to the right size. For this, I'm using a high tooth count blade to avoid tear out and leave a near perfect edge on all these cuts.
I've cut the top, bottom, sides, and middle divider to their final dimensions. And now what I'm going to do is swap out my plywood blade in the table saw for my dado stack and cut dados in the top and bottom pieces that will fit the sides and middle divider.
I had to load up the dado stack with all but two of the blades to make a 23/32 wide dado, which is the actual thickness of a 3/4 inch piece of plywood. For those of you without a dado set, there are other ways of doing this. You could use a router with a specialty bit that's the exact size of a 3/4 inch piece of plywood, or you could make multiple cuts with a regular saw blade. The simplest alternative would probably be to skip the dados altogether with butt joints and use a nail gun and some glue.
I've dry assembled my box here, and over here on this side is where the table saw blades are going to be stored. Here we're going to have some additional storage with shelves, so I need to cut some dados in the side and middle divider here to accept those shelves. Up on top, I'm also going to add another shelf, so I need to cut some more dados here on the top.
The top shelf is not as deep as the rest of the cabinet, so I set up some stops to cut dados that the sides of the top shelf will fit into. Then I squared up the round part left by the table saw with a chisel.
I'm going to store the table saw blades here in the larger portion of the cabinet by standing them up vertically. And the way we're going to do that is by cutting some grooves here in the bottom piece for them to stand in.
I've got a roughly 1x1 piece of sapele that I'm gluing to the front of the cabinet before cutting the blade grooves. I cut it to the right length and marked the plywood height onto the sapele with a marking gauge, which gives me a reference for planing a slight downward angle, so the blades roll easily into the cabinet but won't roll back out. Once the sapele is glued onto the front, I can cut the grooves and then glue the entire case together. To firm things up a bit, I flip the cabinet over to drill some pilot holes and screw everything together from the bottom.
The cabinet is all glued together now. What I was going to do was take a bunch of scrap pieces of sapele that I had and glue them to the top here like this to make the upper slots that the blades would go in, but I've called an audible. I'm going to change that up to just using a piece of plywood here in the top that has corresponding slots cut in it.
I transferred the slot spacing from the bottom piece to another piece of plywood for the upper slots. Cut a couple of test slots and used 1/4-inch spacers to make a plywood sandwich and dial in the fit. And this blade fit perfectly on the first try, so I went ahead and cut the rest of the slots. And I only tested the one blade, assuming all my 10-inch table saw blades would be, 10 inches. Turns out, not so much. I forgot to glue this little strip of Sapelion to cover up the plywood edge before I cut all the slots, so I had to glue it on and recut them. But after having my wife's lava chicken for dinner that night, I forgot all about the mistakes I made in the shop that day. I had a little more gluing to do before dinner, though. First the spacer strips, then the top shelf onto the main cabinet. After that glue dried, I marked and planed the Sapele strip on the front of the cabinet so that it would be flush with the top when glued into place.
I've turned the cabinet around, and what I'm going to do next is make a panel for the back. Because I'm working with scrap plywood pieces, I don't have a single piece that's big enough to cover the entire thing. So I'm going to break it up into sections. I'll do one that's going to cover this larger portion of the cabinet where the table saw blades will be stored, a second for behind the shelves, and a third to cover this top area.
I cut these back panels so that where they each meet is in the middle of either a shelf or the middle divider, so you can't tell that it's actually made from 3 different pieces unless you look behind it, which is much like the kids' bedrooms on cleaning day. Their rooms are clean as long as you don't look in the room.
This little storage cabinet is pretty much done now. What I'm going to do next, though, is put a little lipstick on this pig by taking some Sapele strips and covering up this plywood edging.
I also added thicker strips along the edges of the top, creating a small lip so I can put stuff there without worrying about it either falling off the sides or behind the cabinet. When that was dry, it was time to apply some finish. And the plywood I used was actually pretty nice pre-finished plywood, so I only needed to apply the finish to the Sapele edging. Then it was time to find somewhere to put this bad boy and load it up with sharp stuff. As I was loading the cabinet, I found out the hard way that not all 10-inch saw blades are exactly 10 inches. Out of the 9 blades that I have, I had 4 or 5 that were a tiny bit too tall, like you can see here. So to create a little extra space, I scored in the bottom of the slots with a marking knife and then chiseled out that bottom layer of plywood and sanded it smooth. This was rather tedious, but was really the only option that I had given the cabinet was already glued together. After this, all the blades fit no problem. And the downward sloping angle on the Sapele strip in front seems to really help keep the blades nicely in their vertical position. I haven't had any issues at all with the blades rolling out or moving while I pull one out of the cabinet to use. Smile real big and pretty, and then do your curtsy. Fine.
My shopmates are really cute, but they also turn into gremlins real fast.
Dad, I peeled an acorn using my teeth like a squirrel.
Gross.